Imagine a country where the people take to the streets in every state, from New York's Times Square to the dusty plains of Wyoming, all shouting the same words, "We have no kings." Now, imagine it's not some distant dictatorship, but the United States of America. That's what happened today. October 18th, 2025, the day millions of Americans poured into the streets for what's already being called the biggest coordinated protest in U.S. history. The movement's name, No Kings. Its target, President Donald Trump. Its message, that in America, no one, not even a president, stands above the people. This isn't a small or fringe protest. It's a nationwide wave. More than 2,500 demonstrations across all 50 states, from Los Angeles to Louisville, from Boston to Boise, united under one simple idea: America has no monarchs and never will. Organizers from groups like the ACLU, Move On, Indivisible, and dozens of smaller coalitions say the movement isn't about partisanship. It's about principle, about drawing a line between leadership and rule. 4 months now, the tension has been building. Since Trump's second term began, critics have accused him of turning the executive branch into something far more personal, using presidential powers like a crown. Emergency orders bypassing Congress, loyalist appointments overriding traditional checks, open threats against judges, and an increasingly aggressive stance toward domestic protests. For many Americans, that was a breaking point. And today, they decided to show it. The phrase, "No Kings," traces back to America's founding promise, that after breaking away from Britain, power would rest with the people. And yet, in 2025, protesters say they see a slow erosion of that promise. The slogan has become a rallying cry for everyone who fears the country is drifting toward authoritarianism. Across the nation, the images are breathtaking. In Washington, D.C., the National Mall is packed, shoulder to shoulder, with banners reading, "Democracy, not dynasty," and "Power to the governed." In Chicago, a sea of yellow fills Grant Park. Organizers asked everyone to wear yellow, a symbol of resistance, drawn from global pro-democracy movements from Hong Kong to Kiev. In Fort Collins, Colorado, where smaller protests rarely make national headlines, hundreds turned up before sunrise with signs quoting the Constitution itself. The crowd's composition is striking. It's not just young progressives or college students. Veterans, retirees, small business owners, suburban families, even some lifelong Republicans, say they came out because they feel democracy itself is on the line. It's not about red or blue, one protester tells a CNN reporter. It's about right and wrong. But what exactly are they protesting? Organizers have listed several grievances. First, the expansion of executive power, the idea that the president can act unilaterally on nearly anything, from tariffs to troop deployments. Second, the militarization of domestic issues, as seen in previous months when federal officers were deployed in response to dissent. Third, attacks on civil liberties. Critics point to efforts to monitor journalists, punish critics, and blur the lines between dissent and disloyalty. And finally, the deeper, more philosophical concern, democratic backsliding, that slow, almost invisible process by which elected governments hollow out their own institutions. This is not just a protest against policy. It's a protest against the possibility that the presidency itself has become something closer to monarchy. Yet for all the passion, the organizers insist, this movement is peaceful. "We don't need violence to prove our strength," says one organizer in Los Angeles. "Our power is our numbers." And those numbers are staggering. According to early estimates from The Guardian and The Washington Post, more than 10 million Americans may have participated nationwide, dwarfing even the Women's March of 2017. In city after city, aerial photos show yellow-clad crowds stretching for miles. And in smaller towns, from rural Georgia to North Dakota, even a few dozen people holding "No King" signs were enough to make local headlines. The administration, of course, isn't staying silent. President Trump responded on social media early this morning, posting simply, "I'm not a king. I'm your president, elected by the people. Protest all you want. America is still Trump country." That post immediately went viral, drawing millions of replies and sparking heated debate online. Republican leaders have mostly lined up behind him, calling the protests anti-American theater. Speaker Mike Johnson labeled the demonstrations a coordinated attempt to destabilize the government, while conservative pundits on Fox News called it a globalist-funded circus. Meanwhile, several governors, particularly in Texas, Florida, and Ohio, have activated National Guard units as a precaution. Officials insist it's about public safety, but civil rights advocates warn that any hint of militarized response could inflame tensions further. The ACLU said in a statement today, "This is a democracy, not a dictatorship. When citizens take to the streets, the government's job is to protect their right to speak, not to silence it." For now, the protests remain largely peaceful. There have been a few tense moments, some confrontations between counter-protesters and marchers, a few arrests in DC and Phoenix, but no widespread violence. Still, the scale and coordination of the movement raise major questions for analysts at home and abroad. Because make no mistake, the world is watching. From London to Berlin, Tokyo to Buenos Aires, international media are broadcasting images of American citizens waving banners that read, "No Kings." The irony isn't lost on global audiences. For decades, the United States lectured others about democracy. Now, it's the American people reminding their own government of those same principles. Foreign diplomats are quietly asking, how stable is the U.S. right now? Could this internal dissent weaken its global leadership? Could adversaries exploit it? The protests don't just test American unity, they test its image. Allies see citizens demanding democracy, while adversaries see division. Back home, political scientists warn of a deeper fracture. When millions of people feel compelled to march simply to reaffirm that the presidency should not be royal, it signals a crisis of trust, not just in leaders, but in the system itself. What happens next could determine the course of U.S. politics for years. Will the protests fizzle, absorbed by the next news cycle? Or will this become a long-term resistance movement, perhaps even influencing midterm elections or shaping public opinion for decades? Will Trump respond with humility or hostility? Will Congress assert itself or fall in line? For now, organizers are planning follow-ups, community forums, voter registration drives, and what they call democracy nights, local events to sustain the energy beyond one day. Their message is clear: democracy isn't a one-day event, it's a daily act. But beyond politics, there's a cultural and moral undercurrent here, a sense that Americans are re-examining what freedom means. The founding myth of the U.S. is rebellion against monarchy. The Declaration of Independence itself begins with a rejection of kings. 2.5 centuries later, the echoes of that revolution are ringing again, in the chants, the marches, the signs that read, "We will not kneel." Music swells, slow strings, steady drumbeat like a heartbeat. As night falls, aerial shots show candlelight vigils across the country. From the steps of the Lincoln Memorial to the shores of the Pacific, yellow lights shimmer like fireflies, a visual reminder of unity in diversity. Whether you agree or disagree with the politics, it's hard to deny the symbolism. Millions of people, standing shoulder to shoulder, reaffirming an old idea, that power belongs to the people. And yet, beneath the chants and candles lies an open question. Can the United States live up to its founding ideal again? Can it prove that no individual, no matter how powerful, is greater than the democracy itself? Tomorrow, politicians will spin. Analysts will debate. Headlines will fade. But for the millions who marched today, for those who chanted, "No Kings," this day will linger. It might be remembered as the moment Americans once again looked power in the eye and said, "You work for us."